Okay, so now it's recording. So thank you everybody for joining today. So I'm Benita from Encompass. For those who of you are joining before, you would know my section is tend to be very informative, and there will be quite a lot of details. And don't worry about it, you will get the recording and also the deck later. I just want to check, can everybody see my PowerPoint? Is it working?
Yes.
Yes, it's working, it's showing. Okay, good, thank you. So today we're going to talk about system thinking, and just a little bit introduced by myself. I'm founder of Encompass, a social enterprise in Hong Kong. I'm also passionate about scuba diving. So actually, before I started doing this social enterprise, I actually work on this. I spent a year living in Indonesia, looking at larval dispersal and using a molecular ecology technique to look at how the marine protected area in Indonesia is being connected. And I think I like this diagram on how the larval dispersal from different area. I think it's quite relevant to what we will discuss today, and you will see some example of a system mapping which looks very much like this diagram you see today. So just a quick intro for those of you who doesn't know Encompass. We are a social enterprise in Hong Kong. We work with different NGOs. So for example, we work with Hummingfish Foundation that helps farmers in Timor-Leste to promote different SDGs. So our program tend to be very experiential in nature. We have eco tour, we have sustainable coffee tasting. And just like everybody else, because of COVID, we have changed a lot of our workshops online. If you notice from our event page, we actually do this like maybe 1 or twice a month on different types of SDG, and the goal is really to educate everybody, not only from Hong Kong. I know we have some friends from London to learn about this very interesting topics. So today, in 1 hour, I'm going to attempt to define what system thinking is. I'm going to show you some tools, what system thinking are, and how can we apply this tool in businesses, or I think Vivian was saying in a health or non-health setting, and how do we shift our mindset from traditional to a system thinking approach. So before I start, and I do want this section to be slightly interactive, can you all type in the chat room, or if you are brave enough to share in a group, what is a system, and why are they important? And if there are any examples you can think of, it can be anything. So anything you think is a system, it can be biological, it can be a computer system, or whatever that is. Sorry, somebody need to mute. I might need to do a muting, so we don't have other noise. But if anybody, I don't know, Emma, can you think of an example of a system? So I'll give an example. One example is our body system. So our body have different system, our digestive system, our immune system, and different thing. Anybody can have another example? You can type in the chat room. A city. So SDG 11 is on sustainable city. Connected process, for example, production steps for finished goods. Good. Actually, yesterday I was also talking about circular economy, which is very related. So apparently, Vivian really like health system about diverse components that interact relate in complex ways. So I might ask some of you to share your experience with different system in the end. So just to give a little thanks for everybody who answered. So just to go through what exactly is a system. So a system is actually interacting or interrelated entities that form a unified whole. It's defined by boundaries that serve a particular purpose. And we are really looking at system as the subject of system theory. So you would notice that I have a diagram on the right on an open system. So open system, you have input and output. So for example, imagine you are boiling soup in a saucepan. So that's an open system because the heat is coming in and out. However, if you put a lid on the saucepan, theoretically, you are losing less heat, so it's a closed system, and you're also not losing liquid as vapor. However, there's no truly closed system in the universe. It's a theoretical concept, but if you want to argue on a conceptual level, you can say, oh, there's open and closed system. So there are different components of the system. There are elements, which may be like the little parts in a watch, the individual parts, which tend to be more visible and easy to recognize. And then we have interconnection, how they're related and how they work together to achieve the system purpose. And then we have function or purpose, which is really the least visible part, but really the most important part, because it determines how the system function, what kind of clock is it going to be. So elements is typically the most obvious part. It has very little effect on the system. Interconnection, if you change the relationship between, like what Vivian said, health or city, depending on connectivity, walkability, you change the system. But really, function is really, if you change the function, it changes the system profoundly. So in system thinking, we really, a lot of time, we look at how do we change the system so it can change the ultimate function. So there's a few properties of the system, a system more than some of its parts. So another one important property is emergence. So it's not just elements putting together, but how are they related? How are they serving the purpose? Second of all is how the interconnections work to operate the flow of information. And I'll give you some example in a moment. And the third point is the least obvious part. As I said, the function is very important. And we'll look at what determine the function. And finally, system structure is the source of system behavior. So system behavior can emerge through different time. So what exactly is system thinking? It is a term that used to describe a perspective and a set of methods and tools that make it possible to look at the full extent of a system rather than a fragment of a part. So we are really looking at the full system, not just looking at individual elements. So to solve any social, economic, environmental problem, health, SDG, poverty, climate change, we need to use system thinking. It's founded by 1956 by MIT professor Jay Forrester. And in the end of this presentation, you'll get some resources if you want to do some further reading. So system fitting is really an approach that helps you better understand why you're getting the outcomes you are getting by looking at the underlying cause. So you're not just looking at the symptom, but you're looking at the root causes of the problem. It's also a perspective, so you can take a step back and see the big picture. And finally, it's a problem-solving methodology that helps you understand and resolve complex problems. So this is a simple diagram. On the left, there is event-oriented thinking, or you can say linear thinking. So an example is I drive a car and the car is not moving. So the simple causation is I run out of gas, so I need to get more gas. So this is a very linear problem. In a system thinking, things are more complex. So if we, for example, if we think about COVID now, we think about all the vaccine, or the lockdown policy, and all the social restriction, they all interact, and which one actually is causing what, and what are some overlapping or circular causes. So system thinking is really what we want to look in the right. So if we, I know there's a lot of words in here, but don't worry about it. The point here is people don't become system thinking because they think system thinking is a cool thing, is a shooting thing. But they really think, they really discover that linear thinking won't answer the questions. Linear thinking is really cause and effect, a lot linear. So when we have a lot more complex problem, we cannot only rely on system thinking. And I don't know how many of you have seen this diagram. It's a diagram by ancient Indian story, a blind man and the elephant. So the point here is the importance of seeing the big picture. So as you can see in the comic, right, each of this blind man touches a part of the elephant. So the blind man who touches the trunk of the elephant thing, that is a snake. The one that touches the tail thing is a rope. So each of them is right because they touch a different part of the elephant. However, you really need them to cooperate, so they actually can realize the elephant is made up of the snake, the rope, the brush, and all that. The moral of the story here is people only see part of the complex, part of a complex problem. They tend to see reality in terms of what they do well, and they could do better when they have better resources. And most of the time, people fail to appreciate and question the value of contribution made by others, and they cannot see how their intention, thinking, or actions interact with those of the other stakeholders. And here's an example. An example here on the left, somebody is trying to commit a suicide, or not commit suicide, but actually escape from a fire, but there's a fireman try to save them, but it actually end up to the other building. So another example is Green Revolution. So it came in the 1960s using pesticides and insecticide. However, it was found that it actually causes more problem. It causes biodiversity loss and other sanitation problem. And I'll give you more example. So on the left is the linear thinking. If we apply pesticide, then there will be less insect, then the crops will be better. That's the traditional method, very analytical thinking. But the system thinking, actually, if you apply the pesticide, you have less number of insects. Actually, there are other side effect. You might increase the number of other insects, which actually ruin the other crops in the long term. Here's another example. DDT is a chemical that was used very frequently before. So you see there's some B and R loop here. So I will explain what are those B and R in a moment. So bear with me here. So let's say you use the DDT, so you will kill the mosquito. So on the right here, the mosquito develop resistance to the DDT. So even though you apply more DDT, it doesn't work. There will be more mosquito. On the left there, if you use DDT, the number of mosquito-eating birds will also decrease because there's less mosquito, and then because the bird population decrease, then you will also increase the mosquito population. So it's a very complicated system here. So in a complex system, cause and effects are often distant in time and space. The effect is not immediate. And I will show you a very short video in a moment to illustrate that in real life. So here's the short video. So please bear with me. It's about 2 minutes long.
In the 1950s, the Dayak people of Borneo, an island in Southeast Asia, were suffering from an outbreak of malaria. So they called the World Health Organization for help. The World Health Organization had a ready-made solution, which was to spray copious amounts of DDT around the island. With the application of DDT, the mosquitoes that carried the malaria were knocked down, and so was the malaria. There were some interesting side effects, though. The first was that the roofs of people's houses began to collapse on their heads. Turns out the DDT not only killed off the malaria-carrying mosquitoes, but it also killed a species of parasitic wasps that had controlled a population of thatch-eating caterpillars. Thatch being what the roofs of the Dayak people's homes were made from. Without the wasps, the caterpillars multiplied and flourished and began munching their way through the villagers' roofs. That was just the beginning. The DDT affected a lot of the island's other insects, which were eaten by the resident population of small lizards called geckos. The biological half-life of DDT is around 8 years, so animals like geckos do not metabolize it very fast. It stays in their system for a long time. Over time, the geckos began to accumulate pretty high levels of DDT, and while they tolerated the DDT fairly well, the island's resident cats, which dined on the geckos, did not. The cats ate the geckos, and the DDT contained in the geckos killed the cats. With the cats gone, the island's population of rats came out to play. We all know what happens when rats multiply and flourish. Pretty soon, the Dayak people were back on the phone to the World Health Organization, only this time it wasn't malaria that was the problem. It was the plague and the destruction of their grain stores, both of which were caused by the overpopulation of rats. This time, though, the World Health Organization didn't have a ready-made solution and had to invent one. What did they do? They decided to parachute live cats into Borneo. Operation Cat Drop occurred courtesy of the Royal Air Force, and eventually stabilize the situation.
So, yep. So I hope this was a very real example of DDT that it causes more problem. Oops. So, sorry. So it actually causes more problem of that. So we want system thinking so we can see the synergy of the whole system and how it works. And as I said, the cause and effect of a lot of problems we see, whether it's COVID, climate change, refugee, poverty, is over a very long period of time. So you would need not just a quick fix, but actually look at the solution to recognize that there might be some solutions that will cause more problem, as we can see from the video. If you just put DDT on, this solution might create the red problem, the other problem, and to find a powerful leverage point for systemic change. And this is, I think the last point is very interesting. So actually, you want to figure out in the system, in which part of the system, and we'll look at the system mapping in a moment, in which part of the system, when you change it, you actually have the biggest effect to make the system better or have a different effect. So we are actually all natural system thinking. We are born as a system thinker. When we explore our natural world, when we were a kid, we actually see a lot of connections between things. However, not only in Hong Kong, but in many other places as well. I'm not sure our friend in London, if you agree, that there's only one right answer. We are told there's model answer. However, in today's world, we know that many more problems are very complexes. And that's why there's a lot of more growing interest in system thinking. And for those of you who want advanced reading, there's also some theory on system thinking leadership. How do you lead as a system thinker? So why system thinking might be of value about a complex problem, about recurring problem, the problem that keep happening, you just apply solution, it doesn't work. It also, it could be issues affected by environment or problems whose solutions are not obvious. Some of these problems may be wicked problems. I don't know how many of you have heard about this term. So wicked problems are really difficult problems. There's no clear solution. Many people are involved, and it can take a long time to evaluate a solution. So actually, any of the SDG, whether it's gender, inequality, affordable energy, they are all wicked problems. There's no easy solution. So to start thinking about system thinking, we can start with this graph. Why is there a pattern? What are the root causes? And if we don't make any changes, where will we become? And if we want to make the changes, whether it's improve healthcare, whether it's smart city, what should we do? What leverage point we should do to change the system? So here's an interesting diagram. How can we think of system thinking in some phrases, and I'll explain this. So actually, the diagram doesn't start from the input, it actually starts from the future. So where actually we want to be, phrase A, the ideal future. So we go to phase B, the green part. So how do we know when we get there? What will the future looks like if we achieve it? What does success look like? And then phase C, now we evaluate where are we now, what is the current state, and then the phase D is how do we go from the current state to the future state. And then the phase E, which is not highlighted here, is actually what will or may change the environment in the future. So you can see it's a very intentional, comprehensive process. So here are some examples of how system thinking changed our mindset. I won't go through all of them, but I will explain some of them, which are interesting. So for example, we are really looking at interconnectedness, how different things are connected. Another very good example, important example is the synthesis. A lot of our education teach analysis. We are taught to break down things, to look at components, but actually to solve complex problem, we need synthesis thinking. We need to think about the whole and the parts at the same time, and about the relationship of the connection. And finally, I briefly mentioned before emergency, how the different things come together and what diverse and unique ways they come out from the different elements. So to achieve system thinking, we need to first identify what actually is a system. What are you looking at? Some systems are very simple, while others are more complex. Another example is how do you explain the behavior or properties of the system, and we'll look at some tools which help you to look at. And the third of all is how to explain this behavior. So now I will start with some tools we can use. We look, one example is causal map, and I'll give you an example in a moment. So what actually depends on what is causing what, how is information flowing each other, and all that. So I don't know how many of you have listened to my last talk on design thinking. I think design thinking is also one of the very popular approach these days. There are some parallels between design thinking and system thinking in a way that they are both non-linear. There's an iterative process. It's also, they are both innovative ways of looking at problems. However, they do differ in some ways. So for example, design thinking is more solution focused. We are aiming for the solution and how do we get there. Whereas system thinking is more problem oriented. We are looking at what actually causes the problem and how do you assist in the system. So there are a subtle distinction between these two, but I think design thinking is a very interesting methodology as well. And yeah, if you want to learn more, the diagram on the left here, ideo.org, is also a very good site for you to learn about design thinking. So now I want to go through the Iceberg model of how we usually understand events. So when we see the world in terms of events, we ask what happened, what actually happened there, and then to make sure we understand the root cause of the problem, we look at patterns. What actually are some of the pattern we can see? And then when we see pattern, we can begin to see the causal connections and make hypotheses about the underlying factors that create the events. And finally, we look at structures. So structure is really the causal part of the system. So to think in a system thinking, we need to go beyond just the symptom. We need to go at the structure. So what exactly is a structure? So structure can be something that observable. It can be policies or rules, or some less observable. They can be mental models. And I will explain what mental models are in a minute. So mental models is how we understand the world. They are some help you to understand life. So for example, some example of mental models are supply and demand. I think a lot of us learned that in school, how economy works. Not all economy works in a supply demand way, and I will explain in the end as well, like donut economics is another way to look at economy. We also have game theory, explain how relationship and trust work. We have entropy to help you you understand disorder and decay. So these are some example of mental model. It is a representation of how something works. Because the problem is we cannot keep all the details of the world in our brain. So we need to use these mental models to have a simplified version for us to understand the world. But as I said, for example, supply and demand, they are imperfect model. So there's no single mental model in physics. So for example, there's no even Stephen Hawking, he doesn't have a completely flawless explanation of the entire universe. But so mental models, they are flawed. Okay, sometimes is affected by perception of reality. They are also very powerful. They drive the actions what we're doing, but they are also selective. So we need to know the downside of mental models. So here's an example, okay? So a woman is late on Tuesday for one day, and then the supervisor said, okay, you're late for a day. But however, it seems she's late every Tuesday. So what exactly, why she's late every Tuesday? So maybe the actual real reason is that she need to bring her a kid to the school on Tuesday, but Tuesday school start later. So because she need to do that, she arrive work late. And the structure here is because there's no flexible time. The organization doesn't allow her to work late or work from home or have flexible hours. So what is the mental model? We were talking about mental model. The mental model is maybe that the company doesn't have enough trust for the employee, that it really relies on FaceTime for doing this. So to solve this problem of employee arriving late on Tuesday, if we want to go to the root cause, we need to understand why the company has such policy, and is there anything we can do to allow more flexible work time so this woman is not late every Tuesday again. So Iceberg Model, as I just introduced, is a system thinking tool, so you can understand what actually causes the behavior you get. So for example, you have a disgruntled staff, she's not behaving. Instead of just telling her, why are you behaving bad, or scold her, maybe you understand what exactly is going on. Is she like unhappy with the company's culture? And is there something underlying in your company culture that is affecting the employee? So you really look at the root of the problem. So that's one model. And another model is belief action result framework. So belief, it can be your belief system, and it affects your action. So for example, if you believe that eating organic food is good for you, then you will take the action to purchase more organic vegetables and products. And the result is,
Oops.
Sorry, I would need to mute the newcomers so we're not affecting others. Sorry, I'm muting you all. Okay. So I mean at the result. Okay, so at the result, when you eat organic food, your goal was to sorry, I think somebody you would need to mute. So you okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. I'm at the result part. So by eating organic food, your goal was to lose a certain amount of weight. So this is a belief and action result. And when you lose a certain amount of weight, you feel good about yourself. So you want to believe in organic weight. However, it can also have a self-fulfilling prophecy. So for example, you believe that group therapy is a waste of time. For example, you have an anxiety problem, or you have an alcohol problem. However, so when you attend it, you don't actively participate in the conversation, so you don't really get out of it. So you don't get, when you get nothing out of it, then you further believe group therapy is a waste of time. So this is a loop, a belief action result loop. So this is one thing to look at system therapy, and then I'll give you an example shortly on another loop. So this is a causal loop diagram. And you will see that a lot when you Google system thinking. So basically, there is a way to represent the dynamic interrelationships between different system and elements. So for example, here is an example. When you have more egg means more chicken. More chickens mean they will have more eggs. So it's a plus loop. We call it a reinforcing loop. And then if you have more chicken, however, there's another problem. If you have more chicken, then more chicken will go to the road crossing. However, the road crossing will kill the chicken because chicken are not very good at crossing road. So you have a negative rope. We call it a balancing rope. And if you want to do the math, reinforcing loop is an even loop. So on the left, you can see the green loop, there's 2 plus. So it's a even loop. And when you are on the red loop, the right one is a odd number, so plus minus, so there's only 1, so it's an odd number, so that is a balancing loop. So this looping is very interesting when we look at different systems. So here's another example, as I said, balancing and reinforcing. So on the left here, if you have people are panicking, then you have more people running, then people are more panicking, so it's a reinforcing loop on the left. And then you have the balancing loop on the right. So if the prey number increase, then you increase the predator number. When you increase the predator number, they eat more prey, so the prey number goes down. So it's a balancing loop. And we'll come into some business example here very shortly. So this is example. I don't know how many of you like new apps. So for example, think of a new app, okay? There's two loop. So when there's a new app, this new app about this new game, you're really proud of it. You want to tell everybody. So when it started, there are only a few users. So you talk to your friends and influence some other people to work to install it. So it's on the right loop. There's a word of mouth loop. They're very enthusiastic. So the number of users start growing exponentially. However, if you do that, then there's also another problem, because when more people install the app, then it's hard for people to talk to. There are less people who will download the app because they already install it. So the growth rate starts to slow long. So there's an equilibrium that achieved between this reinforcing and balancing loop. So if we look at a business example, this is an example of Amazon sale. So I know a lot of us like online shopping, whether it's Amazon or Taobao, okay? So there's many different loops here. It looks very complicated, and let me try to break it down. So let's start off from Amazon sale in the middle, okay? So now we have marketing, R1, when we want to sell more things, we market it. So market will increase sales and revenue and profits and all that. So that's why you have R1 and R2, which is the reinforcing loop. However, this reinforcing loop are controlled by different limiting process. So B3, the loop B3 you see here is when you order arrives sharply, the company may be caught off guard and lacks the capacity to fulfill them efficiently. Customer satisfaction then drops because they are not happy when the company cannot fulfill them. And in addition, if you are selling the things really good, then competitor, where they are Barnes & Noble or different bookstore, they are drawn to the new market, making it harder for any one company to gain a lion's share of the business. So that's B4 loop. Then customer dissatisfaction also has other downside. So that's B5 and B6 loop, which the company would need to make effort to regain customer approval, which is expensive. That's B5. And then B6, it makes a customer all too willing to take the business elsewhere. There are many examples of this type of system mapping. And actually, I don't know how many of you are interested. You can map this to whatever you're working on, whether it's health or cities or whatever. It's a very complicated process, but I think it's worth it if you really want to find out what actually causes your system to pivot. So another example I want to share is system archetypes. So system archetypes are recurring patterns or behavior that give insights to the structure that drives system. They offer a way of deciphering system dynamics across diversity of discipline. And this think of the archetypes as storylines of the world. So for example, if you watch Korean drama or Hollywood thriller, there are certain storyline you can tell, you can predict the future. And I will share an example of one of such system archetypes, so we know what it means. So the system archetypes, there are many different types here. And if you just do a simple Google search, there are 12 different types here. Today, we'll just briefly go through one of them, but they are an easy way to help us to identify what are the structural causes of the problem. And as I said, system thinking is most interesting when you look at what is the leverage point that you can improve the system performance. So here's one most classic system archetypes. This is called the shifting the burden, okay? So let's say you have a problem, okay? You have a big headache, okay? So the most easy problem is to take an aspirin, okay? Take an aspirin so your headache go away. So it's a symptomatic solution. However, if you do keep doing it, then your body get used to it, then it's not as effective. So maybe a fundamental solution is you are not sleeping enough or you are stressed. So if we really want to solve the problem, we need to look at the fundamental solution. And now let me give you a slightly more complicated example. So just now I shared the example of the aspirin. So let's say Helen Keller, so a very famous disabled person. So for example, every time when she was young, when she has a problem, have a failure, she cannot do certain things, then the parents help her. So Helen learned that no matter what she did, her parents would help her, and each incident reinforced her parents' belief that she was indeed helpless. So they were caught in a system that were eroding Helen's ability and desire to cope with the world, and shifting the responsibility for her well-being to her parents. So that's why it's called shifting the burden. However, if we want to intervene and solve the problem, maybe we look at the fundamental source. So in Helen's story is to help Helen to care for herself. So if you help Helen to care for herself, her ability to do it, then you're not shifting the burden to the intervener as well. So this is an example of shifting the burden. Another example, okay, I know a lot of us are stressed at work, and I do that as well. And if I'm stressed, I drink alcohol. So in the moderation is okay, but if I drink too much, it's not good for my health. And if it's not good for my health, it affects the way of how I deal with my workload. So it's not a very good symptomatic problem. So this particular example of work stress is called an archetype of addiction. And a lot of drug problem is because people shifting the root cause of the problem into the drugs. Another example, my favorite example is climate change. So let's say we were facing a lot of climate change problem now. Look at Texas, there's a big snowstorm and all that. So let's say there's flooding. So you build more flood walls. Okay, you build more flood walls, it solves the problem, quick fix. However, if you do that, then there's less political will to reduce greenhouse gas emission. And if there's less political will, then the final problem is the greenhouse gas emission is not going. So a slightly more complicated diagram. This is another example of climate change. As you can see, there's plus and minus loops here. So climate change is, and the climate change adaptation, there's a lot of interacting factors. So I won't go into detail of all of that, but this just show you example that the system archetype and the causal loop is a way for us to understand how this different system work. Okay, so as I said, the strategies for addressing the shifting the burden situation is to invest resources on a fundamental solution. So in the Helen Keller example, we want to help Helen to have her independent ability to solve problem, and not just helping her to solve the problem, because helping her, you are actually not helping Helen, you're just solving the problem, but not helping Helen. So stop doing the quick fix and determine your actions based on what you actually want to achieve. So I mentioned there are other system archetypes. In the interest of time, I won't go into all of them, but if you're interested to learn, these are some examples. So to summarize, system archetypes structure that give you predictable outcomes and help you to communicate the structural causes of problem. And as we said, see from the shifting the burden archetype to solve the problem, you really need to look at the root cause. Just like what we see from the malaria example, we really need to solve what exactly caused the problem instead of just having quick fix. Here's another example of how we can map the system. I know a lot of you like post-it here. I know a lot of you do training here. So relationship maps is how different, for example, different members of the team, how they interact, how they respond to each other. And this is a way for us to understand the system as well. So this is an example, for example, for a traffic ticket system. So the traffic ticket system is not only the police, but it also involves the courts, it involves defenders, it involves maybe friends and family. So if you actually draw a relationship map, it's very interesting. You actually see all the stakeholders that's involved in the problem. So I know I've gone through pretty quickly, but I want to leave enough time for Q&A, and I think some of us have interesting things to share here. System thinking really changed our way to think about complexity of the system. It's also an innovative way for us to communicate what we see to other people. and hopefully change our behavior to work with complex force. So we're working on the fundamental problem and not the symptomatic problem. Like the system, the causal map, if you want to see if your solution works, you can change one part of the system and then test if it works. So it's kind of like design thinking in this way. I think that's the parallel. Another point is unaware of the, become more aware of the unintended consequences of your actions. So all that. So for example, this is an example, and I think we all experience that in Hong Kong. The road is very crowded. So to solve very crowded, some people said we need to control car ownership. Maybe not everybody can have 5 cars. Everybody can only have 1 car or something like that. So how will you actually change the system so you're actually decreasing the rate of road overcrowding? Is moving people to suburb a solution, for example. So this is a very interesting system thinking tool by the Water Foundation. And for those of you who really want to learn more, this is it goes into detail of what system thinking is and what are some habits we can do that. So it's quite detailed, so I don't have time to do it today, but I really encourage you, if you want to learn more, this is a very good resource. And finally, SDG, that's what I'm really passionate about. And SDG 12 is one of my most passionate about SDG, because it's the SDG that is least cared about by Hong Kong people. So as you can see, the SDG 12 is not just about responsible consumption. It also affected climate change, it affects cities, it affects health and all that. So the SDG are all interrelated, and that's the beauty of it. So I do like this part. I hope all of you can do this together. You can type it in the chat box. We'll start from the easy question. So anybody want to guess this? So this is a question. So which of the following best describes system thinking? So we have 4 answers here. So I'm curious to what you think. So you can put it in the chat. 2. Anybody have a different answer? So Party said 2. Okay, I think that's 2. Okay, let's try another question. So this question is a little bit more tricky. So second question. So if you think about production input, so would you want to think about raw material, think about saving, think about how competitors are sourcing, the logistic of sourcing? This one is slightly more tricky. Okay, did I scare everybody? Okay, one, good answer. Okay, last, okay, I love it. Everybody is doing it. Okay, last question. Okay. Last question. So if you are running a company or an organization, you want people to work together to encourage system thinking, which one will you do? So take a moment there. Good. So 4. So we want everybody from different departments so they can think beyond themselves. Very good. Thank you, everybody, for participating. So a few more slides. So these are some resources, and you will get this in the email about how what resources you can read on system thinking. And I want to do a little promo. I'm also doing a talk on March 10 on donut economics. It's a theory developed by Oxford economist Kate Wayworth. It's a way of looking at how we live within the planetary boundaries and to achieve social goals. It's quite interesting, and some cities like Amsterdam have used this approach to understand the city, and I forgot who in the group also mentioned city as one of the system problem. So yeah, we'll take a look at that. So if you want anywhere across the world, please join us. And yeah, that's my presentation. And I think we have 10 minutes for Q&A, or anybody have a feedback or whatever you're working on you want to share. I know I've gone through the material very quickly, but I do want to introduce as many concepts as possible in a short amount of time. So I welcome for your feedback. So please, anybody have any comment, feedback, questions? And I don't know if there's a function to unmute you all. Yeah, you can unmute. So anybody, maybe our friend from London, I don't know, you're working on Upgrade NAB, you want to share?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes. Hi.
Great. Yeah, so my name is Gian Pietro, and I'm the co-founder of Happy Maps. That is a social impact aggregator platform. And we aggregate social impact places and brands to support people to alternative decision around their places. And this is like a proper exercise of system thinking, because it's about really understanding how is the situation around them, and at the same time let them reflect what is valuable. And is actually quite difficult sometimes, because it's really understanding what are the parameters that really supports these. This is actually quite tricky sometimes, but it's a very beautiful exercise. And yeah, we are building an apps. We're building maps. You can find it on our website. That is a simple happymaps.com. And yes, we are working with the community, and we are doing a lot of mapathons, supporting the community with the community. So it's a kind of is a mix between donut economic and connecting to the SDGs, and a lot of like system thinking.
Thank you. Would you mind, and I totally got a name wrong, I'm sorry about that. Would you mind to share a link about your app, so we can learn from that? Yeah.
Sure.
So do you have any comments on the system mapping or anything insight? I mean, I gave a very quick intro, but I don't know if you want to add anything at this point.
Well, system mapping is definitely like, well, actually, I'm put also the video because I don't like to speak without showing myself. So yeah, hello. So system mapping is definitely like one of the first part of the system thinking, because it's about what emerge. That is like probably the word that really represent mapping. So mapping is about really like let the points on the map to go up and see what really have like represented in the system. And then after that, using the system to creating connection and loops, but loops and connection can only works if people knows what are the points in and what are the organization, for example, organized, or like what are the factors that they are part of the ecosystem, I would say. And yeah, is it what you were really asking?
I want to ask, do you offer like system mapping like courses or intro that people want to learn?
So yeah, so for the mapping is like in our project is about really scouting the organization and the places mainly where you can do more than buy or you using a service. And so there are things that not only for profit but also connected to a cause. And that's why also like the SDG framework is so important, because you really support reflection in people. And yes, and yeah.
That's great. Thank you. I think I need to learn more as well. I'm still a beginner in system thinking. I'm trying to read about all this different causal loop and the system archetypes. Yeah, but interesting way to look at it. And anybody have questions, comments, feedback? I don't know, Placida. I know it's your first time to have.
Yes.
Hi.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm speaking from South Africa.
Oh, okay.
So my work is So basically, I'm involved in a project on sustainable and healthy food systems. And it's in collaboration with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. So, I mean, we try to use systems thinking a bit to understand the complexity of what the whole SDG impacts need to be. So my question is, when we are doing the causal loop diagrams, for the loops, do all the arrows need to go into the direction of a circle, then we call it a loop?
Jan Pietro, you want to help answer? I don't have a good answer for that.
Yes, I mean, it's like to create a loop is actually is a double connection. So it's proper creating a circle. That can be even a multi-loop, because sometimes like one action can really lead like to different loops that can connect different areas and different also subjects as well. At the same time, not all the action that actually lead into to a negative or a positive loop, but they just have like a kind of like positive spillover or complete negative spillover. For example, I don't know, we were talking about before about the pesticides, maybe like not the pesticide, because sometimes they also consider kind of positive, but at the same time, there could be like, for example, if a factory is releasing some toxic waste in the environment, definitely that is like, it of course is not creating a loop, but it's just creating like a negative spillover. But that is actually affecting different areas of the system. But and that can be like also like creating new part of the system, because resources from, I don't know, from the country or from the municipality or from the company itself, they decide actually to create a service or a system that will help to reduce the toxic waste or like take it out completely. So the thing is that that's quite interesting for that is that the system is never a fixed thing. It's not like a Polaroid picture, but it's something that is always changing like a movie. So what is like very true in this moment, in 2 months will be like completely different. And system thinkings help actually to also reflect about on future, like can be also connected to future thinking and foresight methodologies that really support to have like a different picture on different times on the future.
All right, thank you so much.
Is there anything that I forgot, Benita?
No, well, you give a better explanation than me. Thank you. Appreciate that. So
Thank you.
And anybody else? Placidia or Wayne or Marija, do you have any comments or questions for us? I'm going to put you. Sorry, can I get your name again? I'm totally getting it right. Jan Pietro. How do I pronounce your name?
Yes, my name is Gian Pietro, but
yeah,
because it's quite difficult, usually people call me PP.
Okay. So anybody else have a comment or questions or feedback? If it's your first time to hear about it, what do you think about this thinking?
First time.
Hi, I'm Placida, and it is hi Benita. It's my first time here about the system thinking, and I think it is very interesting in a way that, because often we just break down things in a very small pieces, but without thinking about the interconnections of, with the relationship between different variables. So I think this approach merged with design thinking is a very interesting part to solve a problem or to approach a problem. It definitely gives me some more perspective on solving different kinds of problems. So do you have any idea?
I think it's quite interesting because like often, I think here in Hong Kong, design thinking, it's more popular. Being well known, popular. Yeah. And it's, as you say, it's more solution oriented. So like in my school, like I used to talk about a lot of design thinking, how we have to, like think deeper about solution, but seldom do we think about the whole problem. So I think it's like another way of, like alternative thinking, alternative approach to really handle the issues that we want to, like solve it. So I think it's very eye-opening, and look forward to, like really get a chance to map out our issues and work it out.
Yeah, it would be nice if you can talk more about the design thinking and system thinking. I think it's really interesting to know how they merge together, and maybe are there any different types of problems that we can like maybe use the system thinking is better than the design thinking, or shall we use it together? Like in what kind of problems or what kind of situation that we should adopt, like which method? Like maybe you have some examples that you can share someday. Yeah. Oh, I saw the sharing.
Whoa.
Yeah, just
This is
wanna.
a very nice article that I really suggest to read, that because is in some ways the description of system thinking and design thinking together, sometimes with merging it, is definitely like something that a lot of people are trying to work on. At the same time, like, is not needed, because you can use it together and you can use it like separate. It depends on really like what the system needs at the moment. Do you need more solution? But at the same time can be integrated. But yeah, this one was, I think, an article from 1 or 2 years ago, maybe 3, and it's actually like quite interesting to see like how they can be merged in some ways. It doesn't give any kind of practical perspective on but when I read it, I said like, oh, this is very, very interesting. And so yeah, I really suggest to read this. And that is like from the system thinking, that is one of the resources that Benito gave us before. And yeah, and of course, like, but of course, like, design thinking and system thinking, they're very useful tools. And but it's more about what the organization of the or the system really needs at the moment to work on. And there can be like many other tools that you can use as well.
Yes.
I like how resourceful this group is.
Amazing.
Thank
Especially for newbies like us. Yeah.
Yep. Any question coming from Marija or Wayne? Have I lost Emma, Marija? Is it too complicated?
No, it's yeah, we're still thinking, I guess. We were following. Yeah, it was really interesting though. It was really good to learn the names and how things are called, because I think all of us are at some point, you know, kind of trying to or implementing it, or trying to implement it, but it's good to know the theory behind and all the how to use the names and how to, you know, learn more. So thank you for all the resources.
Yeah. Okay. So I think yeah, I think we have a good section, and thank you everybody for joining. You will get a presentation and recording for today, and yeah, please support us, join our event, tell other people about us. And I love how international this group is, from London to South Africa. So I actually picked to do the workshop at 9 p.m. so our friends from Europe can join. And I know most of us are back to work now, no work from home. So I hope this time slot work for everybody. So thank you. And if you have any questions, comment, you're welcome to message us, email, Facebook, Instagram, and we'll respond to you. Thank you. Have a good night.